Hi, my name is Peter Moe and I'm from Tourism Ireland's Nordic office in Copenhagen. Today we will be talking about fishing, but not just any type of fishing, fly fishing in the west of Ireland. And we have the perfect people with us here today to enlighten us on fly fishing. Heather Ritchie from Delphi Lodge and Felix Brohl from Screeb House. Now Heather and Felix, you're very welcome to our show today. Would you mind telling our listeners why they should come to Ireland to fly fish and what makes Ireland so unique for fly fishing?
I think I'll answer that question first, just being American, because I first came to Ireland 20 years ago, and it was only about 5 years ago that I realized to connect my interest or love for fly fishing with fishing in Ireland, and stumbled on a website called the Great Fishing Houses of Ireland that is a great resource for your listeners. And from there, I went to write an article and sort of explore the different fishing houses. And so it's, if you love Irish culture or have ever wanted to visit Ireland for the crack and the, how do you say, Ceol, the music?
Kyol.
Kyol, the crack and the Ceol, then and do a bit of fishing. It's just absolutely a wonderful sort of, I guess, well-rounded experience. It's just a lovely place, and the fishing is lovely within it.
So it's about more than just the fishing. It's about the fishing and the experiences you get along with it.
Yeah, absolutely, and the people and everything that Ireland is known for, and it's just a great place. It's salmon, brown trout. What else?
Sea trout.
Sea trout. Right?
Yeah. They're kind of the main ones that we have. And yeah, there's also kind of more the predator fishing of pike and perch.
Mm-hmm.
And even what's getting a lot popular now here in the west and also in the southwest is kind of fly fishing for sea species. So stuff like pollock and sea bass as well. That's a whole another aspect. Like, I don't know much about it. I'm more freshwater, but still you also have that, like, and yeah, I think just like Heather said, it's just the whole thing around the fishing as well. We obviously have really good fishing, but there's also more than that. There's like that, the people, they're really welcoming. They'll show you around. It's the landscapes that we have. We literally have like mountains coming up out of the sea, and then you have a lake the other side of it, and all these kind of things. So I think it's just that barrenness as well that makes it quite unique.
All right.
Like that. Then the fishing is the other side of things. We have everything from like little streams to big massive lakes, and like I said, the sea fishing as well. So I think it's the variety as well for such a small little country that we have as well, which makes it quite appealing.
So you talk a lot about a variety there, but what does that then mean in terms of what do you need to bring, or what are the requirements when you go to Ireland to fly fish in particular?
Yeah. So if you want to fish in the sea, for the sea species, you don't need any permit or any license. All you need is whatever rod you want to bring. Then for the other places, like for salmon and sea trout fisheries along the coast, so they're most of the rivers that basically flow into the sea, a lot of them around Connemara and Mayo, you need a salmon and sea trout license from the inland fisheries. They can be bought online. They can be bought in any of the fishing shops, have them. Even most of the fishing hotels have them.
I was going to say the houses. There's a lot
Yeah.
of that.
So if you're staying in one of the great fishing lodges of Ireland, they'll all have them there for sale.
Okay, perfect.
And there's different options there. You can get a 1-day one, you can get a 21-day one, you can get a regional one. There's ones for youth, and there's ones for the year as well. So depending on how long you're coming for, you can kind of get what you need there. And then certain places, like you have the places like Lough Corrib, where you have salmon as well, but it's not considered a salmon fishery exclusively. It's a mixed fishery, because there's also a lot of brown trout and pike. You don't need a license there at all unless you're specifically targeting salmon. And then kind of gear-wise...
Yeah, that's what it is. So you don't really need... Would you bring I feel like we accommodate people for waiters and quite a bit. We there's some folks like up in Ballina, they'll go into Patty's shop there just to buy stuff just to use for holiday, or you have gear for rent. We have gear for rent and that sort of thing. So if you're an American tourist, especially, just depending on people, I find this is a barrier of entry, right? It's like you're planning your trip, and it's just something to think about. I would say reach out to people at the houses and this sort of thing for help, because don't think you have to pack. It depends on if they've done a lot of travel fly fishing, then maybe they're used to having that rod. But don't think you have to pack like big clunky waders and all this kind of stuff just to do a bit of fishing.
So you don't actually need to, have a giant piece of luggage with you just to fly fish. You can get it at the different lodges. That's perfect. That's good to know. I mean, that's a That's
It's
really
it's
good to
great
know.
for family trips as well. Like if people are just doing a trip around with the family and they might go fishing 1 or 2 days. They can't bring all their fishing gear just to go fishing
No.
for the 1 or 2 days. So they can still keep it as a family holiday, we'll say. But if they're in one of the areas where the great fishing houses are, they can stop off there and rent the gear and go fishing there and everything like that. So I think that's quite
Yeah,
interesting as well.
yeah. You do
That's
have
very good
people
to know. I mean,
who they have their travel rods and that kind of thing, and if they're the more serious anglers, they'll have that sort of thing worked out for Ireland as much as they would anywhere else.
hmm,
But definitely, if you're planning like an Irish itinerary, don't let that stop you from thinking to get into the fishing, because by asking, you'll get pointed in the right direction.
perfect. So the top tip there is simply just to ask where you're staying
Yeah,
if they
that,
have any
like
way of
that
helping.
the local knowledge, like everywhere, is just key, and they'll know best
Hmm.
spots for fishing, best time of the year, and then also like that, if they have gear or where to get gear and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. That's never a problem.
Perfect.
Time of the year is actually a good question to cover. I don't know if we
Yeah.
just so the in Connemara you're going to want to come for salmon. It's the season starts in February. Not all the houses are open just then, but the spring salmon that's so lovely and it's known for it'd be like March, April, May, and then if you're kind of just coming to maybe if you're not like a hardcore fisherman or this sort of thing, there's still some really lovely fishing and straight through August and September for the single season salmon and this sort of thing. The sea trout run is in May ish, April, May ish,
Yeah, it's just kind of the summertime really. The sea trout mainly come up,
June. Okay.
and then the brown trout there basically March to August. There's always something happening there. So yeah, basically any time during
Yeah.
the summer when the season is open. So the season is closed from September to February, March.
Just not November,
Um,
December, but otherwise
yeah,
January. Otherwise, you got fishing opportunities, and
yeah,
and Felix knows a good bit more about the loch fishing, I suppose,
yeah.
than I focus more on the river fishing. But the especially slightly inland in the village, we talk a lot about the village of Kong. There, it's famous for where they filmed the
The Quiet
Quiet
Man.
Man, yeah, with John Wayne,
Oh,
and Ashford Castle is there, and there at Delphi as well, and here too you have a lot lake fishing,
Yeah, yeah.
so you can either sit in a really cool traditional looking Irish fishing boat, or you can go stand in the river or by the river.
that sounds really lovely. And you've mentioned so many places. I mean, Heather, let's start with you. Where's your favorite place to fly fish?
Oh, I think Connemara writ large would be the right answer for that, right? So I mentioned earlier having made my first trip over when I was much younger, and I spent 20 years going to County Clare, and my idea of Ireland was the Burren is down there, and it was stark and
Hmm.
windy, and it was just yeah that image if you can picture it. And it wasn't until, like I said, 5 or 6 years ago, I came up into Mayo, and all of a sudden you have the vegetation changes. I would hike. I hiked all around up and down the Wild Atlantic Way, County Clare, and up into Mayo, and you can see it when you're just hiking along. The trees become tall. There's this famous tree called the Scots pine. Its original name is the Connemara pine, and it's gorgeous. Like it looks completely out of place. Like it would otherwise looks like it belongs in Africa or something. You'd have to just Google some photos of it to see what I mean. But it's got this really tall, really long trunk before the leaves branch out, or pine needles at the top. So you start seeing the Scots pine, and you start seeing more variety of vegetation and different things, and it just becomes a different landscape up here. And of course, that impacts the fishery, with the different insects and everything going on as well. So I just think Connemara overall for me is the spot.
Fair enough.
He probably has like a specific river.
Not, I say my one's going to be a bit controversial like that. I do work at Craic, and I like fishing here, and there is some amazing fish in the river here. But probably my favorite spot is Loch Mask, just because I grew up on Loch Mask. I've been fishing it for so many years. I just think Loch Mask is just kind of special because obviously if you're out there for so often, so long, you know it quite well, which is always a benefit when you know kind of where to fish compared to somewhere new. But I just think it has some kind of like a wild ruggedness about it that the other lakes and stuff don't. It's like it's situated just north of Loch Corrib, which probably be a bit more famous and is a little bit bigger. But just there's something about Loch Mask. It has like really deep water. I think it's one of the deepest ones here in Ireland. but it also kind of shoots up to really shallows. So there's quite a varied depth. And the best kind of fishing is when it's really rough. So you get some quite big waves kind of building up on the lake.
Oh, that sounds horrible to me. See, we have such different answers. I will, because now I feel like I have to plug and say, oh no, the Bandura River, coming up from the Killary Fjord there into the Delphi Estate is the most beautiful place in the world, to fish, sort of thing. But for the opposite reasons, like I don't want it to be windy or giant waves or any of that.
Okay, so what I can tell is definitely that there are a load of different experiences and ways to experience fishing in Ireland. I mean, you kind of have you two as, well, quite opposites in terms of fishing, it seems. One more for the calm and the other for the rugged and waves and wind.
Very possibly. And there's folks, I was just chatting with a guy down there, I think Felix was mentioning this earlier, who does like the shore fishing, straight from the beach. So there's all kinds of opportunity. It's an island, so there's fish.
There's fish abound, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And how is the Delphi Lodge and Screeb House connected to fishing?
They both have really rich histories that really tied directly to fishing, if not sporting, hunting, and that sort of thing. So the Marquess of Sligo in the 1820s or 30s would have built Delphi Lodge as a purpose-built sporting lodge. He first built Westport House as his home, and it would have, I guess, I don't know in terms of how long it would have taken to get down into the valley back then, but how many kilometers away is that? I don't know.
From Westport to Delphi?
Yeah.
Is it about 40 kilometers?
40, I was going to say 30, but I'll go with 40. And so he would have built the Delphi Lodge as his purpose-built sporting estate. So to me, it's interesting because it has slightly different characteristics than a home. There wouldn't have been, there's not like it's just different, like the drawing room or always say there's no lady of the house, right? Because it's a sporting lodge. But it would have been really famous for sea trout for 200 plus years. A mathematician from Trinity College bought it up in the mid 1900s, and it became famous or well known at that time. He'd have these big communal dinners, and the man who caught the biggest fish of the day would get to sit at the head of the table, and big house parties. That was really when it sort of came into its modern age and as a fishery. But then they started, both of these properties have hatcheries. It's important to note.
Okay.
Because the sea trout population got a bit decimated by the farms, I'll say, or just in the 1980s, and so they introduced the salmon hatchery, and Screeb also has a hatchery and is doing some exciting things with that. But it's a Victorian property architecturally, and Delphi's.
Yeah, I think they're quite similar, the same as well. Like Screeb was a fishing and hunting lodge for a bigger estate, which is the Balnahinch estate, which also has very good fishing now. But like that 150 years ago, it was kind of one of their posts where they would go out fishing and hunting. And just like Delphi as well, like Screeb was one of the best sea trout fisheries in the world, probably in the west of Ireland even.
Okay.
So like that, they both have quite similar histories. And even our hatchery, I think it's one of the oldest ones in Ireland, if not the British Isles. It's over 150 years old. So they've actually been releasing salmon and sea trout here in Screeb for like that over 150 years. So yeah, that's quite interesting. But now, since we'll say the decline of the sea trout, we kind of are more focused towards salmon, and we get quite a few brownies as well. So like that, it has kind of shifted slightly, but like that, it's still fishing at the end of the day, and it's still fun. So it's just different species really.
Definitely. And actually, just apropos of species, now I forgot to ask, but what's your favorite thing to catch or fish for, I guess?
So for mine, it's probably kind of in relation to whatever being Loch Mask and all that. It is the brown trout. Kind of, we'll say the average size here in the west is maybe depends on. In Connemara they grow a little bit smaller. Well, there's a big difference because you get some in the little lakes that don't grow very big, but they're still fun to catch. And then other ones, they kind of feed down near the sea. We get some really big ones here in Screeb as well, nearly up to 10 pound. And then in the big lakes, you get them even bigger. They even get up to 20 pound. They get really turn into proper predators. We call them ferox trout then. So you can kind of get everything from, depending on what you want to do, kind of small little ones to proper big ones. So I really enjoy either end of it as well. Like that, it's really nice trying to catch a small one, but kind of being really careful, really small leader and all that, being really delicate. But at the same time, you can also go out and get the big ones, it's completely different.
Fair enough. And how about you, Heather? Any preferred?
Yeah, I'm definitely here for the salmon. My preferred on the larger scale there. I'm from North Georgia, so a little thing called a brook trout is my favorite fish of all time. But I'm really into grayling right now. That we don't have them here, and I'm really into, on the flip side, because I'm a fair weather sailor, fisher. I'd say it's the bonefish down in like Turks and Caicos and so forth. But here it's all about the salmon for me because of the learning curve. Growing up trout fishing, I would have come like probably a handful of people the first time around with like my little fish, trout gear, little fish pond nippers and little, I don't know, the wrong rod, light rod and all this kind of stuff. And the salmon fishermen haven't, like leader and tippet, all this stuff to do with, enticing the trout and making it believe that I'm, Mother Nature and this sort of thing. And the David and them up there and Mick up there at Delphi just being like, no, and just taking the tippet off and this sort of thing and putting a big old salmon fly on that doesn't have anything to do with mimicking nature. It's an aggressive situation, right? Like you're just trying to get their attention. And so as opposed to trout where you're trying to mimic food. And so it's or same with grayling. So it's just it's a completely different attitude. And and yeah. So salmon.
So it's a whole different type of way to lure in the fish, basically.
Yeah, they're coming in from the sea and you're trying to aggravate them, which is a different mindset for you.
Yeah, so the salmon, they actually, when they come in from the sea, they don't feed when they're in the freshwater.
Oh,
so I think it's a biological thing so that they don't eat the baby salmon that are living in the river. Obviously, kind of nature to protect itself or to protect the species. If the salmon would be feeding in the river, they'd eat all the small little fry from the previous year. So yeah, you're basically just trying to get them to bite into it out of instinct or out of aggression. And yeah, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not trying to fool them the other way.
Yeah. A learning curve.
Quite different then. I mean, very different.
Shift. Yeah, I'd call it it was a learning curve for sure, but now it's like an attitude shift, almost like in my mentality completely. So it's a completely different mindset,
So you said that you learned that at the Delphi Lodge. I mean, so take me for example. I do fishing here, but it's mostly, well, it's not fly fishing. So is there a way how could I get into fly fishing in Ireland if I want to try it?
I think similar to what we said about the gear, like if you email Screeb House, you're going to get somebody like Felix. If you email Delphi, you're going to get passed on to somebody like David McAvoy, who's been the fishery manager for 40 years. And they'll answer these questions because they'd love to have you, as a guest. But it's the same at all the great fishing houses. I'm sure if you probably even emailed Inland Fisheries Ireland, they might, point you in the right direction. And so I think that, there's a handful of good guides around Connemara. I know there's different experiences, like you can ask for tuition or you can ask for just sort of a fishing experience, which would be, it could be a ghillie, a really cool old ghillie who takes you out, and he's going to help you along the way too. So it's I don't know, what do you guys do here for people who really want to learn?
Yeah, so I think especially like a lot of fisheries here in the west of Ireland, we'll say the ones where you fish from the shore, they've actually like that. They've been developed over the last 150 years, where we'll say 100 years ago, the big landlords, they didn't want to get their feet wet and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things built out. We call them butts that you can walk out and fish the river.
Right.
Okay.
But that also makes it easier for casting with the fly, because depending on the way the wind is coming, you can always find a spot that you can fish with the wind and that behind you is free. So maybe a problem with fly fishing on the river is you're casting, but you need the thing behind you. If you're not very skilled, you get caught in the trees behind you and so on. So a lot of these spots, they're free, like basically 360 degrees. So it just makes casting as a beginner a lot easier. And then, just like Heather said, there's plenty of options for, we'll say, guides to just show you quickly. And it's not that hard to switch from normal fishing to fly fishing. And to even the loch fishing, you're fishing on a drifting boat. So there's no trees or anything behind you. And the wind does most of the work blowing out the flies and the line. So that's nice as well.
Fair enough. And assuming because you mentioned it yourself, like coming in as a family, then there's probably also some experiences where you can get some guides to teach you how to fish. or
Yeah, and
fishing
I
school,
think
or
the lake fishing, especially for kids, could be great. I mean, that's one thing I think. So as an American, you we kind of segment, our bass fishermen, so that your American listeners will know what I'm talking about. But it's sort of like the delicate art of fly fishing versus like your tournament bass fishermen, right? And they're out, and it's just hard to explain. But the lake fishing here is probably a really good first experience. Lock fishing, they call it. But you're out in a beautiful little wooden boat. You can cast on the fly. Great for kids. I mean, just being out in the boat for them is probably cool.
Yeah, I think like even when we say fly fishing, like there's even several options there. There's your, we'll say, traditional fly fishing where you're casting the whole time, but there's also some similar ones that are nearly derived off that. And depending on where you go, some of them are more popular, some of them are just kind of done with kids to get them into it. But there is other options like that of trolling the flies where you're just driving the boat or rowing the boat and pulling the flies behind you. So it's a different thing. Or there's another thing that's quite popular, especially this time of the year when the mayfly is up, called dapping, where you basically fish with the wind on the boat. And we get plenty of wind here, so that's not the problem. You can use a normal rod or you can use a fly rod as well. And you have a woolen thread at the end of it with maybe 1.5 meters of this woolen thread. And then you have your leader on that and you have a little or a big mayfly. Traditionally, they used to use live natural mayfly, but now it's whatever, tide or live. And you basically just, like the name suggests, dabble the fly on the surface of the water. And it looks really, really natural. It can be one of the most effective ways of catching fish through the mayfly as well. And you don't have that kind of casting back and over that can be quite tricky for some people to get.
Yeah.
And like that, you can have a variety. You can have one fisherman fly fishing, and maybe if he has a kid or something like that that hasn't fly fished before, or a wife, she can do dapping as well, which is kind of, you can do it straight away kind of a thing.
Okay, so there's
there for everyone.
Yeah, basically experience is set up for everyone, so everyone can have a go. So it doesn't have to be one person going out alone. It can be, well, if you're there with your family, you can go
and fishing for 20 years to fish. Exactly. Yeah.
I would only think of like the seasonal thing, if you're already like a experienced angler in the USA and you come over and you're on your own, you might want to come in February. And if you have the family with you, they might not be having the best time in Ireland in February. So that maybe more of a June thing. You just reminded me though about when you said wool, did you, at the spring angling fair, I saw they use wool almost like from the sheep, like a strike indicator kind of. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, but I wouldn't normally do that.
Yeah,
I'd either fish like that. There's even within fly fishing, there's so many different things. There's whatever you can just do. If they're into fishing, there's dry flies where you're just on the surface, and there's obviously wet flies, which is kind of the traditional Irish way, we'll say. Where you're just kind of fishing below the surface and you're just stripping the flies through the water. So even like that, there's so many different options there.
I just thought, with being a tourist for life, I just thought that was a special. I was like, that's so Irish, like to use the wool, and
repurpose it.
Yeah.
No, it definitely makes sense. So you mentioned before that these places are not country estates or country homes. They're lodges. So what does that mean? Does that mean that they were built as just for the purpose of fishing or hunting, or?
So Delphi and Screeb sort of both were in different ways. Like he was saying that the Screeb would have been one of the sort of outposts of the Ballynahinch estate.
Yeah.
And Delphi very much was purpose built as the Marquess of Sligo's sporting lodge. But when you go to the great fishing houses of Ireland, I mean, Ashford Castle is included, and so is Mount Falcon. There's a few other ones. So it's different. There is such a thing as the Irish country house. And then there's these ones that happen to either be built for fishing or around fishing, or also like here at Screeb, they do deer stalking, and we do woodcock shoots up at Delphi. So
yeah, the owners of Screeb, for instance, they reintroduced red deer into Connemara again about 30 years ago, and they've had great success with that. So like that, they were probably here traditionally, but then they were hunted to extinction. Obviously, the farmers aren't too happy about the deer eating the grass, but so we have the deer as well. And even for people who don't hunt themselves like that, it's just so cool to go up and look at them and take pictures of them. So I think a lot has changed as well. Obviously, you said they're not traditional country houses, but now in the last, we'll say, 20 years or something like that, a lot of things has changed as well. Ireland has become probably a lot more tourist friendly as well. And obviously everything has to kind of evolve in that way as well. So for instance, like that, we also have a spa as well and things like that, which could work well. They can whatever go fishing. The husband can go fishing, and the wife can go to the spa, or vice
I was
versa.
about to say the wife could go fishing. And
Yeah. So I think it depends on
or I would say you can go fishing in February and then warm up in the spa.
Yeah, exactly. But in both our cases, I'm sure, like our rather both of the cases of the estates, and I'm sure the others as well, the percentage of people who are angling is a minority to just Irish tourists in general, right? Mm-hmm. So we were talking earlier about, we see a lot of French and a lot of cyclers and a lot of people who, it's, if you're coming to the west of Ireland, you're inevitably starting out or getting, you're going to go to Galway, and it just depends on your itinerary. But I mean, I think if Connemara is sort of on your itinerary, staying in some of these places, sort of if you jump off from Galway, do the city for the day. A lot of people go out to Clifton, up to Westport, has a wonderful music scene. One of the chieftains owns a bar up there, now retired chieftain, I reckon. And so it just depends on, which region of Ireland people kind of, now I'm talking about Americans, but whether it's 8 or 12 day itineraries, you can't do it all, because there's also really good fishing. I was going to mention there's a woman called Glenda Powell down in the Blackwater in Cork. And so if you're coming to Ireland and your Connemara is not on your agenda, down there is on the Blackwater, it's sort of one of the other really prime spots.
Fair. Yeah, I mean, there is definitely going to be fishing abound in Ireland, considering it's an island and full of lakes and rivers. Beautiful lakes and rivers.
It rains a lot, so we get a lot of water.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's green. It's as green as you couldn't believe. But just getting back to the states, or country houses or lodges, so you can stay in both these places, or in all of them, I assume.
Yeah, they're all we'll say now more like hotels, basically. It's not like you have to book the whole lodge or the whole thing. You can just book a room.
Yeah.
Depending how long you want to stay exactly. Yeah, I think like everything now, we have internet, so you can book it online. You can look it up online, all them kind of things. So I think that's the easy part. It's just picking which one you want to go to is the tricky thing.
Fair enough. And I'm sure you would have very different opinions on that, considering you're both from each your own place.
Yeah, but I think like that, it's, you obviously don't have to pick one or the other. You can go to both now. Yeah. But yeah, the Great Fishing House of Ireland website is great, because it gives a nice little description of the hotel and the fishing and all that around it. And it just gives you a good overview. And there is is it 8 or 9 or 10 different ones. So there's a decent choice there as well, depending on what you want to do.
And we were talking about that earlier. It's not an exaggeration to say you might, be planning your trip and want to do a day of brown trout targeting in Screeb, and then go up to Delphi or one of these other places for salmon, and inevitably you'll have other people with you potentially. So you might do some other things as well, we hope. But, that's the idea. I wouldn't say I don't, it really is. I say Connemara, but we're sort of talking about the west of Ireland to include the Western Lakes and that sort of thing. And Cong, like I said, is a particularly beloved little fishing village.
Yeah, you even have the Moy up in Mayo as well. Like, it's one of the best salmon fisheries.
Ballina, absolutely.
Yeah, it's famous for its salmon fishing it there, and it's a big river, like so.
And Moy and there in Galway, you can get a day ticket to fish right in the city.
Yeah,
you can still, they're still available on the Moy in Ballina right now. Like, it's not expensive. It's through Inland Fisheries. I'm sure that you can get gear from Patty up there at Ballina Angling Center. But anyways, you can stand right in the cathedral pool, or what's the other one up there? I can't remember.
Is it the bridge pool?
I don't know. Yeah, but I mean, if you've ever walked through Galway or Ballina or whatever, it's a super cool thing, right? Because you're in the city.
Yeah.
You can fish right there. So
that sounds fantastic. Yeah. Do you have any tips for anyone wanting to try fishing in Ireland in general? Just because you've mentioned it.
Any tips? Just go out and try. Like we said, there's so much water that you can try. I think, just like that, getting out. But then also, like we said earlier, if you just get onto whatever, if there's something like a Screeb House or Delphi, or even a fishing shop, a local fishing shop, I think like everywhere else in the world, just the local knowledge is the best thing you can get. Like that, you can read so many books and so many online articles, but if you go into the fishing shop and say, how is the carp fishing today? They'll tell you exactly, this guy got 10 fish in this bay with this fly.
Okay, so definitely go for the local knowledge then.
Well, he's kind of stole my answer, because that's what I was going to say was let's say, like, sort of ask and listen,
Mhm.
and because and don't be afraid of, maybe we're also do-it-yourselfers, and we don't want to ask the places because we think they just want our money, sort of thing. Like, that's not the case, like I can say, is it from the sort of tourist perspective, like if you're in the States or you're in Norway or whatever, go ahead and shoot an email and send a phone call and make the connection while you're planning. Don't try to find it all online. There are a couple of good websites, but my goodness, just ask people. I mean, this is what Ireland is famous for. You'll ask one thing and learn five. So that's sort of the same thing from the opposite perspective, is please just ask. I mean, I don't see how an introvert can survive over here, because you just need to talk and you'll get your answers.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And speaking of talking, any Irish words or sayings you might share?
Come here. that's my stock favorite.
My one would be Céad míle fáilte, which means basically 1,000 welcomes, which probably ties in with what we were saying earlier on, that like the people are so friendly as well, which ties into the experience. And like we were just saying there, if you just ask someone, they'd be so happy to help out. And like that, there's not too many people that are fishing now anymore, or it's kind of, we'll say, nearly like a declining sport. So it's always great when you see someone else that's into fishing and that wants to learn more about fishing.
Someone who wants to share your passion.
Exactly, yeah, and share the knowledge and get more people interested in it. So, yeah.
Oh, and don't think you have to choose between golf or fishing over here. If your spouse is intent on golfing in Ireland, please, and you think you might want to do a bit of fishing, I think we can meet in the middle and do a bit of both.
Definitely. I think that's a very good tip as well. So, final question. Where or how can our listeners get in contact to find out more about what you have on offer?
Well, I think, like we were saying earlier, the best thing is probably just, the Great Fishing Houses of Ireland. And from there, it gives you the overview, but also links to the websites of the individual houses.
Okay.
That's probably the easiest. I think if people want if they have any questions to what we said here, just, probably email the Screeb email address, which is on the website as well. It's just Screeb, booking@screeb.com. And I'll get that as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Perfect.
Yeah, same as well. I think that's the I'll say, me personally, I'm happy to answer questions. I absolutely want to help Americans plan fishing trips over here for the first time and that sort of thing. So please don't be shy about asking. Even if I'm just referring you to the person who actually knows, that's what I'm happy to do. So
it's always nice when you can introduce someone from your home country to something.
Yeah, and I'm just really passionate about it. Like I said, it took me I don't know why, but it took me forever to connect loving Ireland and loving fly fishing. And then when I did, I'm just like,
match made in heaven.
Yeah, fish in water. I don't know.
Fish in water. Even better. All right, I think that was perfect. That's it for this time. Thank you very, very much, Heather and Felix. It's been wonderful to learn a bit more about fishing, and I really well and truly hope I can get to Ireland soon and fish, see if I catch anything.
Yeah, we'd love to have you over. So if you do come this way, let us know. We can go for a pint in Galway and then head out fishing.
And you can tell me about all the best places to fish.
Absolutely.